Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention?
Great Scott! There's no crying in baseball!
You better hold on tight, Spider Monkey.
This is where the fun begins.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. That's right, we're ranking The Martian. The Martian is a 2015 science fiction film adapted from the 2011 novel The Martian, written by Andy Weir. Astronaut Mark Watney is left stranded on Mars after a dust storm, forcing him to use his ingenuity and resilience to survive, while his team and NASA race against time to rescue him. This movie was surprisingly hard to rank, and I'll get into that later, but for now, let's just talk about those 10 essential aspects of a movie. First is plot. Does the movie follow a comprehensive story arc and is plausible within the world that has been created? That is definitely one of the strong points to this movie. I personally thought the plot of this movie is what carried it, is what made it a good movie. When you talk about the world that has been created, well, it's just in our regular world, and the thoughts, the science behind every problem that he runs into on something like Mars is interesting. I enjoyed that. I thought that was a good plot. It's a survivor film, which there's been a bunch of survivor films made, but this one just has a different take on it because it is on a completely different planet, and it also had the perspective of the people that are trying to save him along with him just trying to survive, which that's been done before, but I just thought the way it was blended was really well done, and the plot and the story of this movie is what really carries it. Second is attraction. Does the movie have an interesting premise with a high entertainment value? I thought it definitely did. It is just a survival film. It's another survival film. There's been a million of them already. However, the setting of Mars does make it interesting. I enjoy that they really focus on a science aspect to the movie, whether it's actually real or not. It's real enough that if you don't know any better, you're convinced that what he's doing would probably work, and it's enjoyable. It makes for a good movie. I don't think I would have made it very long. I don't think I could have even rationed the potatoes. If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die full. All right, I ain't going out hungry. I'm just gonna eat all I want and then just call it the end of the day. So it's interesting to see what he does, what he's willing to go through to survive. I absolutely think it does have a very interesting premise. Third is theme. What message or truth is the movie trying to convey? It's the same message that any survival movie is, and it's just, what will you do when you are pinned against the wall and your life is on the line? It's themes of just resilience and ingenuity and being creative and not giving up. A lot of what survival movies are, period. However, I do like that in this movie there is a part where they work with China, and China is willing to work with us in order to just save this guy's life. I thought that was interesting. I enjoyed seeing that in the movie. It kind of just has this message of just what's really important. People's lives are important. It doesn't matter about countries. It doesn't matter about history. It's about, hey, this guy is going to die if we don't get your help. Can you please help us? And I enjoyed that. I thought it was an interesting little side bit that you could honestly just overlook, but it's a nice positive message. Fourth is dialogue. Is there a real feel to the conversations? I thought so. However, a part of this movie is just him talking to a camera, logging everything that is going on. So really he's talking to you, the viewer, but it's kind of masqueraded as he's just video logging it for whoever happens to find him when he is gone or when he has left, So that part of it is done well, and it's a clever way to get his thoughts and have it feel real instead of him going crazy or just having a weird narration. It was a nice, direct, easy way for the dialogue to come out, and it made a lot of sense. So I thought the dialogue was actually kind of creative in this movie. Fifth is acting. Are the characters convincing? Now, obviously, the main star of this movie is Matt Damon, and thinking back with a more critical eye, looking at it and thinking about how people had perceived this movie. He got a lot of praise for his acting in this movie, and he is a good actor, don't get me wrong. He definitely does a good job in this movie, but I really didn't feel like he did an amazing job. I really felt like he did good with what he had and was good with the emotions, but he felt very replaceable. I think there is a lot of good actors that or actresses that could have stepped in his shoes and made just as good of a film. I thought the actual story and plot is what carried this movie. A lot of the acting is decent or to good. It's not anything special, and I really didn't think Matt Damon was anything special, but he does do a good job. Otherwise, I would point out Jeff Daniels. He has to play the real business side of the movie. He's the only one that is really harping about the business aspect, but also trying to save somebody's life. But, we've got to look about the future. I just thought he played that character well. He was really convincing as this guy that's just, he is sympathetic, but he also, he understands that he is in a position where every decision he makes is important to the future of NASA. And I enjoyed it. I thought he just delivered that role well. 6 is cinematography. Is there a creative use of lighting, setting, and wardrobe to convey emotion? Emotion-wise, it didn't do a whole lot for me other than being tense when the action scenes, what little there were going on. I do think there was a lot of room for emotion in this movie that just wasn't really captured. They could have made a couple decisions with the story to go a little deeper into how is this guy being affected by the fact that he is the only person on this planet. And there's a real weird sense of time because the whole movie goes over like 500 days. But it really doesn't feel like it, and it doesn't really seem like the 400th day is any different to this guy than the 100th day. And maybe that's the real case. Maybe that's just what they thought how that would go. I personally don't think so. I really think somebody would start losing their mind. I mean, he does have communication, but it's not with people. It is with people, but it's not the same as, you and I talking. It just doesn't. I feel they could have really went deep into this character and the emotions that he was going through, and they just didn't. They really kept it at surface level. And that doesn't make it a bad movie, but I feel if they did those things, it really could have gone into the great aspect. It really could have been a fantastic movie, but instead it's just a good movie because the plot is interesting and it carries it. But the acting and the characters themselves, you never really get too attached or into them. The costume design I thought were cool. I thought they looked good. I thought they actually looked useful. They looked like I feel we would make a uniform if we were going to Mars. So a lot of the set pieces were good. I mean, it is Mars. It's just a sandy planet. How much more can you really do cinematically? It didn't do anything great, but it did some things good. 7th is editing. This is all about the pace of the movie. The movie is 2 hours and 31 minutes long. It's honestly a pretty good length for this film. I really felt good when it was wrapping up. If anything, it might be slightly long, but honestly, I wouldn't even say that. I think 2 hours and 30 minutes was a good length to tell the story that they were telling, and I was invested and interested enough in this movie that 2 hours and 30 minutes went by, and I could have swore it was only 2 hours. 8th is soundtrack. The soundtrack of this movie, it's forgettable. It's there. They have their little like disco thing that they were trying to make kind of funny. It was okay. It was there. It didn't do anything to elevate the movie at all. 9th is directing. Now I feel the director is in charge of the previous 8 aspects. They're the ones that's got to give it their stamp of approval, put it all together, and make a really good movie. Now the director of this movie is Ridley Scott, very well-known director. This was his 23rd movie. The previous 22 movies that he had directed were The Duelist, Alien, Blade Runner, Someone to Watch Over Me, Black Rain, Thelma and Louise, 1492, Conquest of Paradise, White Squall, G.I. Jane, Gladiator, Hannibal, Black Hawk Down, Matchstick Men, Kingdom of Heaven, A Good Year, American Gangster, Body of Lies, Robin Hood, Prometheus, The Counselor, Exodus, Gods and Kings, and finally, The Martian. Now this man has obviously made a million movies, and he is so... I did not realize how hot and cold this man is. There are several movies in here that I've never heard of, or just don't really seem that good at all. And then he's got amazing movies in there that are classics that everybody knows. And he's got some movies in there that are just okay. He's a very interesting director. He's all over the spectrum. I don't know how to feel about him. I would say this late in his career, this movie is a good movie. It's good in a lot of ways, and that probably comes from experience. But you've got to go with the ebbs and flows of a director like this, where you're gonna get something really, really good every now and then. So you just keep letting him make movies, and that's my opinion, is to just keep letting him make movies, and every now and then he's just gonna give you something that's really, really good, but he might just give you a lot of mediocre and bad in between then. 10th is Time. Will it stand the test of time? It's 9 years old at this point, and it has stood up. 9 years isn't a very long time, but it is a good movie. It still looks good. I think it will always kind of look good. However, it doesn't really give me the sense that it's somewhat of a classic. Weird enough, that's why it's hard for me with this movie, is that it does a lot of things well, but it doesn't feel unique enough. It doesn't feel special enough to stamp its place in time and be remembered. I think people remember it because it's not that old yet, but as it gets older, I really think it will be forgotten. Now for the review section. Rotten Tomatoes critics gives it a 91. The audience also gives it a 91. I don't know if I've ever seen these two agree. And IMDb gives it an 80. Now, I actually think IMDb with the 80, IMDb is always lower than any of the Rotten Tomatoes, or higher. I feel like I often gravitate towards IMDb more. However, I feel I'm stuck between 80 and the 91s. I think it's an 85 kind of movie. It's good, and it does a lot of things well, but it's missing the great. And there's nothing to really complain about with this movie, but there's a lot of things that could have been done, and it would have made it a really good movie, but instead they weren't done, and it's just a good movie that you can't really complain about. So 80 is honestly closer to where I'm at. I would probably give it a little bit higher than an 80, but I feel like it is a very easy B movie. Finally, for the rankings. For the year of 2015, in the entertainment side, out of 2 total movies, it is first, above Paranormal Activity, The Ghost Dimension. Not hard at all. Honestly, this movie is way easier to watch than Paranormal Activity. And I think if you're watching this and you disagree, then you are at the wrong channel. Cinematically, out of 2 total movies, it's definitely first. It's above Paranormal Activity. I mean, it's not even close. These movies are very different. This one is much more memorable and does a lot of things better than Paranormal Activity. Ghost Dimension, again, isn't even really a competition. For the decade of the 2010s, out of 3 total movies on the entertainment side, I have it second, just below A Million Ways to Die in the West, and above Paranormal Activity, The Ghost Dimension. This is where it's hard for me with this movie. it's entertaining. I did enjoy it. It is a movie I would watch again. I would choose to watch this movie again. But it doesn't do anything amazing cinematically, so it doesn't make the movie heavy emotionally, which usually makes it hard to watch again. This movie doesn't really do those kind of things, so it's a little bit easier to watch again. So it's hard to place on entertainment for me, because I would watch it again, but is it that entertaining? Well, it's a 2.5-hour movie. It's hard to watch. I don't know. I settled on the fact that I do think I would prefer to watch A Million Ways to Die in the West. That's a long movie as well, but I do feel it's funnier. I feel it entertains me better than The Martian, just in a different way. And I have this category for the less seriousness in movies, because there are great movies that are not serious, and I feel that a comedy and some of those easygoing movies, those are what this category is made for, because they should be represented. And that's why I ended up putting A Million Ways to Die in the West above The Martian. Now, cinematically, out of 3 total movies, it is first, and it's above A Million Ways to Die in the West. Now, this is pretty easy. Though emotionally, it doesn't have a whole lot more to do than A Million Ways to Die in the West. It's just the concept I definitely feel represents cinema better. It's more serious. It has the science aspect. It's an interesting plot and some character development, more than what A Million Ways to Die in the West does. So pretty easily, it's number 1. Now, all time, out of 32 total movies on the entertainment side, it's going to be 10th, just below Alien Romulus and above No Country for Old Men. Now, surprisingly for me, this movie was very similar to No Country for Old Men as far as entertainment goes for me. It's somewhat of a setting I don't really enjoy. I mean, it's just like dirt. They're both in just desert, and then Mars, which is just a bigger desert. And they both have a serious tone, and the plot is what really carries the movie, and it's very interesting, and you want to know what happens from one thing to another. So they're very similar movies for me. I just think the space aspect is something I enjoy more about The Martian. Also, going back to Earth and the interactions with NASA, I enjoy that part of the movie. I think it's just a little more entertaining for me personally over No Country for Old Men. I've got it below Alien Romulus. Again, another space movie. Alien Romulus is just, it had me more on the edge of my seat. I think I will always be on the edge of my seat. And plus, I just like, I like aliens. I like seeing the alien. I enjoyed the android aspect to that movie. It's just an easier watch for me because it's just more interesting than The Martian. Now, cinematically, out of 32 total movies, it's going to be 11th, just below The Mist and above Joker Funiado. Now, it's above Joker. This was also kind of a hard one because Joker has some really, really good acting in it. And that is something that is very important to me. I would say acting is just below emotion for me because I will remember movies because of one person. And I feel the acting done in the second Joker is really well done. And that it's better than The Martian. However, there's some issues with Joker that is just disappointing. The plot was disappointing. It has too many little problems where The Martian just does everything well. And it doesn't do much great, but it really doesn't have much to complain about. And that's what ultimately led me to put it over something like the Joker, because you're going to represent film better by having less problems. And that's really what made me decide to put it over it. Now, it's below The Mist because I just really love the concept of The Mist. I love the fear that it induces, but also I love the dynamic of showing different people and how they would react, and you just really have strong emotions for those characters, and there's moments of really good acting in this movie. The thing that really holds it back is the fact that it was done when CGI just really wasn't that good. But otherwise, I just feel that movie does a lot for cinema, more than The Martian, which I don't think takes as many leaps and doesn't do as much as far as being innovative than The Mist. I really felt The Mist did some excellent things that just put it above The Martian. Okay, now that's all I've got for The Martian. Weird movie to rank. Let me know where you would put it all time. If you want to check out my best friend Dom, he also does movie reviews on his channel, Basso Movie Reviews. He does the exact same format that I do, where he compares it in the same year, decade, and all time, but he's got a very different opinion than I do. If you think I'm maybe a little too serious and pick movies apart, I think he's probably going to give you a nice different perspective than I will. Make sure you comment the next movie you want me to review and subscribe if you want to see me do the video on that movie. But otherwise, I'm Mr. Majoritarian. Stay classy, San Diego.